morning to you. What are you guys talking about today?
Good morning, Jenna. Happy New Year to you guys. Coming up on Undisputed, who is the most important Cowboy going into the playoffs? Is it Dak or Zeke? And has Antonio Brown played his last game in Pittsburgh? Plus, we have Nick Cannon live in studio with us. We're going to talk to him about the Lakers, his new Fox show, and plenty more. Undisputed coming up next. Jenna, back to you and the guys.
All right, Jenny, thanks. We look forward to it. Back here, we're going viral. Yesterday, Texas and Georgia faced off in the Sugar Bowl, but it was this interaction between mascots before the game that had the internet buzzing.
Man, I've been telling y'all about these live mascots for years.
Yay or nay?
Man, Bevo almost gorged some people. This is unwieldy.
The Georgia football team probably should have looked at that and said, this might be a little bit of foreshadowing on how this game is going to go. But what I'm a little concerned with is why is the cameraman deciding to turn his back to a 1,700-pound steer to take a picture of a bulldog? Man, that don't make no sense.
I'm glad it was Texas, Georgia, and not Texas, LSU. You could have the live tiger out there. It's all fun and games till someone gets a longhorn to their back of to their kidneys. Man, my man Ugga almost got stomped on.
Yeah, he got Lodo, didn't he? He was the first one to move.
And credit to there were some camera people out there that if you saw some of the other viral videos, they stood their ground. I'd have been gone.
Yeah, I'm not turning my back to a longhorn, though, just to take a picture.
And they got one guy, you got one, like, a coaching intern holding on. What are you going to do?
Man, if Bevo's going somewhere, he's going that way. Ain't nothing nobody can do to stop him.
I used to live in Texas and drive past some of the ranches that are nothing but these longhorns. Those are scary animals, and they can move. Like, those things are sneaky fast.
Sneaky fast.
Gotta coach his sons.
Back to our top story today. On Monday, it was reported the two best players on the Steelers, Big Ben and Antonio Brown, got into a heated argument in practice leading to AB's benching on Sunday. It's now being reported that Brown actually requested a trade that is near impossible due to a heavy cap hit, but also the fact that Antonio Brown's one of the best receivers in football. Here's Ben Roethlisberger on what went down.
People are making a big deal about a walkthrough on Wednesday, that there was a blow-up, a fight between he and I. I don't know anything about that. If there was a blow-up or something, I sure as heck didn't see it. This big deal was made about AB on Thursday morning, because after the walkthrough, AB left on Wednesday, and then on Thursday morning, I talked to AB, and everything was great and fine, and then this story just keeps growing. So, like I said, I consider AB one of my closest friends on the team.
All right, Nick, I guess in the beginning of the season, something like this would seem preposterous. Trade Antonio Brown, but at this point, what do you think? Should the Steelers actually do that, or at least listen to trade talks for Antonio Brown?
Absolutely, yes. The Odell situation, I said the Giants should listen. They shouldn't necessarily be initiating. If I'm Pittsburgh, I'm initiating. This is, to me, gone past the point of no return. When you have shown, it's one thing to show erratic behavior off the field, and even some of it being spilling into the locker room, the Facebook Live, which, again, I think was a big deal because of the jeopardy it put Mike Tomlin in. Who knows what someone's going to say? He wasn't recording that. He was broadcasting that. The erratic behavior he showed this offseason, allegedly throwing furniture off a balcony and almost hitting a small child. He's going to be in court about that at some point. But now we're talking about for the Steelers on the field. This was their biggest game of the year. It was a playoff week. And whatever Big Ben says, here's what we know. He wasn't there Friday. He wasn't there Thursday. He wasn't there Saturday. He showed up Sunday, and he forced Mike Tomlin's hand in their biggest game of the year to bench their best player, and they were vulnerable to losing. 2 touchdown favorites in a must-win game. They needed a kicker they brought in off the street, did a couple key field goals late just to beat Cincinnati to stay alive. I am listening to offers for Antonio Brown, because if this level of behavior, not showing up for work, week 17, must win, is acceptable, then what is not acceptable? Then what can you tell to Juju, James Washington, any of the young players, other than we just got to put up with it? We just have to, because, and I understand different rules for different guys based on talent, but at some point, it doesn't mean no rules for guys based on talent. You can accept more, but you don't have to accept everything. I would absolutely try, if I can get a good return, more than a first-round pick for him, I would trade Antonio Brown.
I'm interested to see what Mike Tomlin has to say about this, because you're saying that it's a Mike Tomlin decision, and then Big Ben is dismissing the fact that something happened in the week that led to Antonio Brown not being ready for the regular season finale. But all I'll say is this. I mean, the issues that Big Ben has had in this franchise have been well documented. Of course, him throwing teammates under the bus, all of the turnovers that we've seen from him excusing away his poor performances, but then criticizing teammates and trying to hold them accountable. It just doesn't make any sense to me. And I think we're at a stage now where Antonio Brown has had enough of Big Ben's antics. Because in order to compete for a championship, Big Ben has got to play better. He can't throw the ball to the opposing team.
Agreed.
One thing that you can say about Antonio Brown, for all of the shenanigans that you've seen from him in the Facebook Live and him going AWOL this past week, Antonio Brown always shows up for work on Sunday in terms of production on the field. There hasn't been a more productive receiver in the NFL since 2013 than Antonio Brown.
Across all categories.
Across all categories. Doesn't matter whether you want to look at receptions, targets, whatever it is.
Yards, touchdowns, everything.
He's the best. He's the best. So in terms of that, you know what you're getting from Antonio Brown. And moving on from him, this idea that you would consider putting him on the trade block, I don't think you become a better football team by moving on from Antonio Brown. This is not an addition by subtraction situation where all of a sudden your culture is going to improve to the level that you're going to be in better shape to compete for a championship without 84.
Chris Canty, if you were in that locker room heading into this Sunday's game and you're a player on the Steelers and you worked all season, you showed up every single day for practice, you did everything that was asked of you, and you see a guy like Brown doesn't show up on the most important week leading up to the most important game of the season for this team, how do you welcome a guy like that back into the fold and say, okay, we're going to go back out and fight for you again next year?
Well, one thing I will say is the guys in that locker room have more insight in the situation than we do. Sure. And so I think it's the friction between AB and Ben Roethlisberger and a frustration from AB that the organization hasn't done more to get Ben Roethlisberger back on track and give this team the best chance to accomplish its ultimate goal, which is to win a championship. So you recognize that it's a finite window that you have to be able to get this done. And the fact now that you're going to lose Le'Veon Bell in free agency, not only are you potentially talking about losing what has been the best running back since 2013 in yards from scrimmage, which is Le'Veon Bell, but then losing Antonio Brown this offseason without a viable option to replace him, that doesn't make any sense to me.
I understand why the X's and O's, why it doesn't make sense, and typically I would be making the same case, that he's too talented and that your quarterback's older and that your window is still slightly open. And I do want to, I understand the salary cap ramifications. I want to make this clear. Trading him, you take a $21 million dead money hit. Now, it should be noted, if he's on the team, he's $22 million. So whatever moves you're going to make in free agency in the draft, you can still make all those same moves. You just have a giant gaping hole at #1 receiver that you're going to be asking Juju to fill. So they're in the same cap position with or without him, but that's a big problem because you're missing such a productive player. I understand that. And I understand that I think this is all fruit of the same poisonous tree, which might be the franchise for 15 years placating Ben Roethlisberger.
Right.
Allowing Ben Roethlisberger, whether it was early in his career, the motorcycle incident, or the horrifying allegations off the field, or him throwing Todd Haley under the bus, Mike Tomlin under the bus, teammates under the bus, he's never been held accountable. But that horse is out the barn now. You're not holding him. You're not trading him. You're not cutting him. He is a first ballot Hall of Famer, going to have his number retired in Pittsburgh, a golden god in that city, even if he shouldn't be because of who he is off the football field. That is done. The only chance Mike Tomlin has to wrestle control back of this locker room, in my eyes, is to do something jarring like this. Because if you can't count on a guy, what can he do for me? And when we're talking about the Steelers' window, let's say they bring him back. We know Le'Veon Bell's not there next year. Why do we think they're going to be much better than they were this year? Which was not good enough to get in the playoffs. Do we think Big Ben is going to get better in year 17? Or year 16, pardon me? Do we think all of a sudden that this team that has shown the inability to consistently beat the teams it should, like Denver, like Oakland, that's going to be cured? I might take my medicine on this one. I might see if someone wants to give me a first-round pick and something for Antonio Brown. See if Juju's ready for the upgrade. James Washington, who I drafted, and I know he was a little disappointing this year, but I spent a good draft pick on him. See if he's ready for the Juju role and try to start rebooting this. Because you've got to show up. I can deal with all the Odell interviews. I can deal with all the sideline tantrums. I can deal with all of the unnecessary celebration penalties. If I know, and I can deal with you throwing the ball at Big Ben, because that guy can be a jerk.
Yeah.
But after you throw the ball at Big Ben, come to work the next day on the most important practice of the year. That's what I need from you.
Well, let me ask you this question. If you get rid of Antonio Brown, are you a team that's competing for a championship next season in 2019?
Most likely not.
Okay, but guess what? Your quarterback, he's in a contract year in 2019, so the organization will have to make a decision on whether or not they want to extend him. If I'm not competing for a championship, what's the value of having Big Ben as my quarterback moving forward?
It's a terrible situation all the way around. I understand that. If this is not tradable behavior, then what Mike Tomlin has to tell the whole team, even